Hello friends, and welcome to the studio. I am in here today and I wanted to take some time to share about a recent project that I put on my website, which is a set of cycle tracking zines. So, in case you didn't realize, I'm a person who has a period. There are so many of us out there, it's insane. I've been struggling with my periods since I was young, and especially once I got into my late 20s, early 30s, it got really intense for me in the mental health aspect, but also the physical aspect too. I was experiencing around 2 weeks of PMS symptoms, which I later realized were PMDD symptoms, which is premenstrual dysphoria disorder, and it sucked. It was awful. It was life impacting. It took away so much of my creative energy, my social energy, my ability to take good care of myself. And one of the ways that I learned how to take good care of myself in that situation and generally learned more about my body was through cycle tracking. So I'm going to go into my experience with tracking my cycle. I'll talk about how I developed the zine and then how I ended up developing a lunar cycle tracking zine, which instead of following your internal cycle, you follow the phases of the moon or the lunar calendar, which is 29 days long. Both of these zines are available for purchase on my site, but also if you see a need in your community to distribute these out, you can reach out to me and I will send you the PDF and instructions on how to get them made yourself. So let's get into it. When I first started tracking my cycle many years ago, I was using the app Clue, and while it was helpful to know when my period was coming and just where I was at within that time frame, it didn't provide the information I was looking for. And around the time that Roe v. Wade was overturned, I just started feeling really uncomfortable with an app having my information, period. Having my period information, period. So I started cycle tracking manually. I actually read Maisie Hill's book, Period Power, which was more informative than anything I've ever consumed about my body. It was incredibly helpful to understand the different phases of a menstrual cycle and connect better with what was happening inside of me when I was experiencing things that really I felt so out of control of, especially when it comes to pain or like mood swings, things that I couldn't get my footing with. And I'm sure that if you experience menstruation, you understand the feeling of you're acting a certain way, and you can kind of like zoom out a little bit and be like, wow, I really don't agree with the way I'm acting, but I actually just can't stop. It is a very unsettling feeling, and this is what I was specifically struggling with and was able to learn more about through just educating myself on what happens in here. Turns out a lot of stuff happens. Once I read that book, I started tracking my cycle in a format where I could actually zoom out and see my cycles stacked against one another so that I could better understand the rhythm of my experience. So I was noticing that there were certain experiences I would have month over month, and as I began to track my cycles in this stacked manner, I was able to identify certain days of my cycle that were reliably difficult for me. Especially day 12 is the one that always sticks with me. It's just a super low day. It dips so hard, my anxiety spikes. I have a lot of like social inner conflict where I'm convinced that people are unhappy with me or aren't wanting to spend time with me, or, just sort of this like paranoia. And you can imagine that would be very validating to come back around that day and be feeling these really intense feelings, and then look at my cycle tracker and notice that either that day or the day before on my previous cycles, I felt the same, and just being like, okay, this is part of it. Like, it just is so affirming and validating, and that was such a big piece for me. At the same time, I was working with a therapist, working with a psychiatrist. I had gotten on medication for anxiety and depression because I was struggling really badly with anxiety. And a lot of things were just kind of coming together for me, where this extra information was crucial for me to have a greater context of what was going on inside my body, so that then I could make decisions that allowed me to take better care of myself. Why would I plan my birthday party on the 12th day of my cycle when I know that on that day I would much prefer to just be at home and lay low and let that storm kind of pass through? Or if I know that maybe 5 days before I actually begin bleeding, that it's gonna feel impossible for me to do basic human things like make myself dinner, wouldn't it be such a nice thing to do for myself to let my husband know, hey, it looks like tomorrow is going to be a little rougher for me. Can you plan to make dinner? It's just so empowering to be able to not only provide for yourself what you need, but give other people the tools to do the same, people that care for you and that you feel safe sharing this information with. And there's just so much that clears up when you have the information and the power to use it. So at this point, I was really hooked on this tracking method, and when I'm into something, everybody knows about it, especially the closest people in my life. I wasn't on social media at the time of all of this, so I really was just processing it out loud with my friends, the realizations that I was having, the curiosities, the relief that I was feeling. And after so many of my friends were like, wow, that sounds great, I decided I wanted to create a zine, a little informational booklet that is actually also a cycle tracker that allows people to track their cycles in the way that I was. I love the zine as a medium for this because zines have been used historically as this way to pass around information that was intended to fly under the radar, information about activism, bringing around new ideas. It's such like an underground feeling means of communication, and it just felt so great. It's so accessible. It's so repeatable. And as I was working on it more and more, I just realized how important it was for me that the information was out because of how much it changed my life and my relationship with myself and my body. It became this desperate feeling of like, I need to make this easy. I need to make it grabbable and usable. I really focused the language of the zine to make it really easy for someone to get started with tracking in this way. And I also broadened my scope and really made it focused on anyone who menstruates. Everything is totally gender neutral language. All we're really talking about in the zine is when are you experiencing certain things and what is it like for you? Whatever body you got, you're welcome. So after everything came together, I finally was able to put the zines out there and launch them. Launching them meant something really different at the time. This was in late 2023 when I wasn't on social media, so it meant bringing some to my local yoga studio for them to give away for free, bringing some to a boutique that I have a relationship with here in Jacksonville, and they sold them there, connecting with the local period pantry and giving some to them to put in their pantries across the town, and also just talking to friends about it near and far and sending them information to distribute it where they are. So where did the Lunar Cycle Tracking Zines come in? I really wanted to create something for my friends who, for whatever reason, don't have a regular cycle. There can be so many reasons for this, including my current experience now, which is being on birth control that changes the way your cycle appears or doesn't appear. I really wanted to make a resource for them to where you still have the option to collect data about yourself and your body and your experience, but it doesn't have to be attached to this like seemingly mythical period that sometimes takes 40 days and sometimes takes 90 days and sometimes is here for 3 weeks, you know. Literally, no bodies are the same. And if you've had a menstruation or gone through menstruation, you know things get crazy in there. So I was interested in making it for not only for people with irregular periods or people who no longer have a cycle for medical reasons, maybe they're going through perimenopause or they're postmenopausal, or maybe they are a trans person and they're interested in experiencing that cyclical nature in life. What better way to like shape things around than the lunar calendar? The moon is way more regular and reliable than any human period, and there's so much that you can connect with the different phases of the moon. I personally have a practice with friends where we pull tarot cards during the full moon, so I have a really close attachment to that point of the lunar cycle where I'm reflecting, I'm considering what came before, what's coming after. It felt really natural in the same vein as creating this reflection tool for your body, that you would also have the opportunity to kind of reflect and connect outwardly, whether that's like spiritually, astrologically, whatever purpose it kind of serves for you. Maybe just being connected with the earth and the natural rhythms of nature and outer space. No matter what brought someone here, the Lunar Cycle Tracker is so cool because it allows us to just look and see what two things could be connected in our lives. And then we can then plan ahead based on that information. So that could be something like, every time I have a therapy appointment, I notice that the next day I am really socially depleted. Okay, next time I plan my therapy appointment, I should give myself some breathing room to process whatever comes up after that. Or maybe every time I have dairy, like I get really bad acid reflux or heartburn, or every time I see my family, I numb out for hours at a time afterwards. Just sort of beginning to identify these correlations so that you can then use that information and take good care. It can be hard to make these connections when we're just trying to move through life and our day. And so not only does it offer the chance to kind of create constellations in your experience, but it also is just a container to check in with yourself every day, to ask yourself, how did I feel today? How was my body? How was my mind? How was my energy? Was I feeling social? Was I feeling, there's all sorts of different things that you can measure, different variables depending on what's important to you, and you can switch it up at any time too. All of this to say, I find both of these trackers so valuable, and I just want people to learn more about themselves and take good care of themselves so that people can be happy and find the relief that I was able to find, and find something that works for them. And yeah, if you're interested in tracking your cycle, I think that this is your invitation to give it a try. I am now going to show just sort of like what the trackers look like on the inside and talk a little bit about that. And then we'll get out of here. Here is the first zine. We've got the Track Your Cycle to Build Trust with Yourself, an interactive zine for people with periods. On the back is just a little bit of information about how this zine allows you to track your cycle for 6 months, so you can identify patterns in your cycle and you can anticipate and plan for whatever your body needs rather than meeting yourself with judgment or frustration. You can just really be ready. So the zine starts out with a quick overview of why I choose to track and the overall cycle comparison, which is this first spread here. So you go through, as you can see in this example here, you go through and mark your dates. And then on this one, it's just a very zoomed out version. So you would input overall, how was your day? How are you? How was your body? Good, meh, or bad. And then as you go over time, as you see here, you might notice on day 2 of your cycle, you're kind of historically bad. That's really helpful because if it's day 2 tomorrow, you might just want to lay low. And then in other cases, you might notice that you were pretty good on day 5, and then not so good, and then good again. You could go deeper into the cycle tracker, look at that day, and try to understand potentially what was going on that day. So not only are you tracking your cycles over time in a broad sense, but you're also getting really specific about it with the per cycle tracking. So this looks complicated right now, but here's the key, and you will essentially have the chance to track variables that are important to you, not only just how you're feeling, but also menstrual cycle symptoms and anything else that matters to you. So this is the extent of the guidance information, and then you just get into the tracker. So you will build out your own cycle every month. You have a couple of pages to write notes about how you felt that day to give that extra context that you might be looking back on when you are checking out the differences between your days. So all your extra information can be here. I gave a little suggestion on what you might want to write, and yeah, then you carry on to your next cycle. As I mentioned, this is 6 months long, so the rest is just in there. And of course, you could color whatever you want on this thing. If you want to color the front, color the back, make it your own, add in variables that are important to you, change the language of anything if certain things feel better, and really make it your very own tracker. And then up next, we have the Lunar Cycle Tracker for finding your unique rhythms, an interactive zine for cyclical tracking, no menstrual cycle needed. Again, this is a 6-month tracker. It can help you learn and better understand the patterns and routines of your body. If you're seeking to track your mental and physical experiences outside of the context of a menstrual cycle, or you're just looking for a way to channel the trust-building power of cycle tracking, but you don't bleed regularly or at all, this zine is for you. So again, really similar format here. You've got kind of a little bit of an introduction, and then you go into the overall cycle comparison. The big difference is that this is based on the moon. So there's quite a bit more info here than in the cycle tracking zine, because you've got different information about the different phases of the moon and things that you could be reflecting on as you are in those different phases of your cycle, your lunar cycle. Even here, you'll see that the first day of each cycle is the new moon, and then the last day is right before the moon turns over again. Again, you'll see examples of how you can track certain variables and decide which ones are important to you, and then guidance on how to track per cycle. So this one has less of a focus. As you'll notice here, the key has some similar things on this side, but rather than menstrual cycle symptoms, it's more mental health, experiential types of things. Whether you're feeling joyful, creative, zen, anxious, you're struggling, this can help to track some of those more nuanced feelings and understand where they might be coming from. And then here, as you are tracking each month, you again will have your little note area, and the moon phases are listed here. And unlike the cycle tracking zine, which didn't have any numbers written here because that's totally determined by how long your individual cycle is, this one is pre-written, and then you can set an intention for this lunar cycle, and it just kind of creates a little space for you to have a check-in point at the beginning of each lunar cycle, thinking about your intention, reflecting back at the end of the cycle and considering how that moved through. And yeah, you get the chance to do this 6 times. I'm really proud of how these turned out. I think that they are sweet, gentle, efficient, helpful, generous. There's so much about them that I'm so very proud of, and I'm excited to get to share them with a broader audience now that I am back making content for the internet. If you have any questions, let me know. Also, again, want to reiterate, I would like these to be out in the world. Obviously, you can buy them from my site, but if you decide you want to distribute them yourself in your community, please reach out to me and we'll get it done. Like, let's help people, because understanding your body and building trust with yourself, that is a powerful way to give a little bit of a bump against capitalism, because capitalism doesn't want you to understand yourself and definitely doesn't want you to be well taken care of. What else will you buy if you have everything you need? So let's do it. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you soon.